Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting the final session of today's conference. Up to now, there have been discussions about Turkey's and China's perspectives to changing international geopolitics and regional issues. And in this panel, we have 4 experts who are going to offer their perspectives about bilateral relations between Turkey and China. I think many things have already been said, so I don't want to start with an introduction. I would like to directly go to our panel. So we have 2 speakers from Turkey and 2 speakers from China. And without further ado, I would like to give floor to our first speaker, Dr. Diren Doğan from Alanya, Alaaddin Keykubat University. So if you can give us your perspective within 10 minutes, that would be great.
Yes, please, but I need to add, I'm not doctor yet, but next month I will be doctor, inshallah. Dear distinguished speakers and participants, it's a great pleasure to be here today. First of all, I would like to thank SETA for the invitation. When we talk about China-Turkey relations, we often focus on trade, energy, critical infrastructure, or strategic roads. But today, I want to explore something different with you, and I have just one question for you. How do both countries respond to the global conflicts? In recent years, China and Turkey have taken on more visible roles in international crises. They come from different systems, but their approaches often show similar patterns: dialogue over conflict, balance over confrontation, and a clear respect for international law. So today I have 3 different cases to explain my opinion and to illustrate harmony between these 2 countries' foreign policy strategies. Let me start with Gaza crisis. Turkey has been one of the strongest voices in Gaza crisis, especially calling for immediate ceasefire and just peace. It organized emergency summit, sent humanitarian aid, and kept open talks with Egypt, Iran, and Qatar. On the other side, China also called for preservation of coal, supported ceasefire resolutions at the United Nations, and hosted ministerial delegation from Arab and Islamic countries in Beijing. Both countries rejected violence, opposed civilian targeting, and defended the idea of 2-state solution. Their words were different, but the message was the same: stop the war, support justice, and return to dialogue. Let's look at the Ukrainian issue. Turkey also most active actor in Ukrainian issue. As you know, hosted talks in Istanbul, led the grain deal negotiations in Black Sea, and helped with prisoner exchange. In my opinion, this was not just a political statement, it was diplomacy in action. On the other side, China followed a different path and offered a peace proposal with 12 points, sent envoys to Ukraine, Russia, and EU, and lastly spoke about sovereignty, territorial integrity, and peaceful dialogue. I need to mention again, unlike the West, their perspective and their approach totally different. They try to lower the tensions, not add to it. And on the one side, Turkey used shuttle diplomacy. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan visited Russia, Ukraine, and tried to set a negotiations table in Istanbul or Antalya. China used long-term proposals. There are all different tools, but same goal: the escalation through the dialogue. Lastly, we can look at the Yemen issue. In this case, Turkey gave humanitarian aid, supports United Nations peace efforts, and avoided taking sides between regional rivals. On the China side, China did something different in this case, but just as important. Maybe you can remember in 2023, China created negotiation tables between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and they tried to restore their ties. And it helped the Yemen conflicts, and it helped to ease the Yemen conflicts. And this effect also showed China's capacity as a mediator actor. I need to mention again, both countries avoided the use of force. They didn't deepen the conflict. Instead, they opened for solution. So I have one more question to you. What does all this mean? We know that both Turkey and China are not formal allies. They don't always coordinate. But in global crisis, they act in similar ways. They avoid choosing sides. They call for diplomacy. They respect state sovereignty. They focus on practical solutions. So we can easily say that there is a common orientation. On the one side, Turkey is more visible. It works on the ground. It speaks strongly and moves fast. I think, in my opinion, it's totally because of Turkish side's proactive characteristic. On the other side, China is more cautious. It works quietly through the proposals and platforms. It's also come from China's normative characters in foreign policy. All of these tell us something about their bilateral ties. As I mentioned at the beginning, China-Turkey relations are not just about trade. They are also about how both countries see the world. They want a fairer international system. They want voices in global diplomacy, and they try to act not with pressure, but with presence. As conclusion, as we all accept today, in today's world, power is shifting, tensions are rising, and trust in old institutions is falling. In this uncertain landscape, Turkey and China show us a different path. We may not call it a partnership, but it's a clearly shared approach. And that alone opens the door to a new kind of dialogue between China and Turkey and between East and West. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a very interesting opening for our panel because you highlighted the similarities of Turkey and China's approaches to the changing world and the crisis going on throughout the world. I particularly am interested, maybe we can discuss this later, in your points that both countries try to lower tensions, avoid choosing sides, respect state sovereignty, and offer practical solutions. So this common perspective might lead to maybe more concerted actions, diplomatic actions, at least in some issues. Thank you very much for your intervention. And now I'd like to go to our next speaker, Mr. Yang Chen from Shanghai University. And his title is Retrospect and Prospect, 15 Years of China-Turkey Strategic Cooperation Relations. The floor is yours.
Thank you for moderator, and thanks for the invitation of SETA and our embassy. This gave me a great opportunity to talk about the China-Turkey relations. So as the ambassador said in the morning, this year is about the 15 years anniversary of the strategic cooperation relations between China and Turkey. Actually, the background is like that. In 2013, the one bilateral initiative was proposed. Then who is the first country to sign the governmental the agreement for the building of a bilateral initiative? Guess what? Turkey. Turkey is the first country to sign the government agreement on the bilateral initiative. But when we talk about the China and the Middle East relations, compare with now in China, we have 5 Middle East countries. We have a comprehensive strategic partnership with China. Now 8 are strategic partnership with China, including Palestine. Israel is our innovative partnership. Now, compare with the China and the other Middle East countries, China-Turkey's relationship is not so high, actually. So, in particular, in the past few years, China's relation with Saudi Arabia and Iran have improved quite a lot. Saudi Arabia, Iran, and UAE have joined the BRICS cooperation mechanism, and Iran has joined the SCO. So we can use one sentence, Chinese sentence, to describe now China-Turkey relations. Like we got up very early, and we caught up with a late gathering. Therefore, so the core question I want to discuss today is why why China and Turkey's relations have not developed towards a higher level, even for 15 years. So several questions need to be discussed. For example, the evolution of China-Turkey relations in the past 15 years, the progress, and also the challenges, and also the prospects of China-Turkey. 4 total questions, but time is limited. I may emphasize on the first one, the third one, maybe the fourth one. So for the first one, the evolution of China-Turkey relations in the past 15 years are divided into 4 stages. The first period is from 2010 until from the establishment of strategic cooperation in 2010 to the attempted military coup in 2016. The main feature of this period is 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. Although China and Turkey, we had a lot of activities, year of Chinese culture in 2012 and the year of Turkish culture 2013. But as just some Turkish scholars, because I was in Turkey in Boğaziçi University 2013, 2015 for 2 years. I saw some Turkish scholars' opinion quoted. So according to some Turkish scholars and observers have said, Turkey has not shown a positive attitude towards the development of China-Turkey relations. And China does not seem to occupy a very important location in Turkish foreign policy. So the driving force to promote China-Turkey relations is from Chinese side, not the Turkish side. So also I have witnessed some examples. For example, 2014, the double standard reports of Turkish media on violent terrorist incidents in China. From June to July 2015, there was large-scale anti-China demonstration broke out in Turkey. I was in Istanbul at that period. And in 2015, Turkey's decision to cancel China's Hongqi HQ-9 anti-aircraft missile system during the G20 summit in November 2015. Held in Ankara. So held in Turkey. This is the first stage. The second stage is period is from the military coup in 2016 to February 2019. The main feature of the stage is a friend in need. Is a friend indeed. Shortly after this attempted military coup, our then Vice Foreign Minister Zhang Min visited Turkey very soon in August of 2016. On August, another example. On April 16, 2017, remember when Turkey had a constitution referendum, the result is not clear. And Liu Yandong, then Vice Premier of the State Council of China, visited Turkey again. According to a report of Turkish media, this also represents China's firm support for Erdogan and the AK Party government. So after the coup, Turkey really realized the importance of China-Turkey strategic cooperation. So in September 2016, President Erdogan expressed gratitude to China when attending the G20 Hangzhou summit in China. In May 2017, President Erdogan participated in the first Belt and Road International Cooperation Summit Forum hosted by Beijing. But if you remember the picture of the family picture of this first summit, nearby our President Xi, left, right, Russia's President Putin, and another one, Turkish President Erdogan. It means that China pays attention, the importance of Turkey to China's foreign policy, to China's budget initiative. So this is the second period. The third period is from February 29th to 2023. The main feature of the stage is moving forward, but in doubt. In February 2019, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey criticized China on issues related to Xinjiang. During that period for China, the United States began to contain China to play the Xinjiang card. So Turkey became the first and the only country in the Islamic world to criticize China on issues related to Xinjiang. So although, after the G20 summit in Japan, the following President Erdogan's visit to China, July 29th, China and Turkey relations again back to normal, but we cannot deny the influence that the strategic mutual trust has been damaged by that comment. Another, the fourth period is from the just 2 years until now, 2023 until now. Now China-Turkey relations, we see that in the past 2 or 3 years just came back to the real normal track. A lot of national high-level officials visits between each other, and also a lot of activity organized, during the past 2 or 3 years. A lot of visits, Hakan, Fijian, visited Xinjiang. So it happened in the past just 2 or 3 years. So this is now we're moving to the normal track. For the second issue about the progress, due to the time limit, I will not talk about that much. So the third question is about the challenges about the strategic cooperation between China and Turkey. First, economically speaking, although China is Turkey's second largest trading partner and Asia's largest trading partner, the total trade volume of the two countries has not made a big breakthrough since 2010. And there's still a big gap between China and the target of 50 billion US dollars. In 2010, we had the expectation for 50 billion US dollars, but still the number after 15 years still not satisfy that goal. So one reason is that Turkey has no advantage in China-Turkey trade exchanges. The products exported to China are mainly new raw materials, while the important products are mainly machinery. How to reduce the trade deficit, how to upgrade the exchange of products between the two countries, and how to expand mutual investment between the two countries are all issues that need to be considered by both our two countries. From maybe Chinese side, even Turkish brands are not so popular and not so famous, are so not well known in Chinese market. Maybe so every year in Shanghai we have China International Airport, China International Import Expo. So we see that in the past 2 or 3 years, a lot of Turkish brands are shown in that expo. So Chinese market will welcome more brands. So this is the first issue. Second, in terms of politics, China and Turkey may have different understandings, opinions on important global issues such as United Nations reform, Syrian crisis, Arab Spring, separate issue. However, the most issue to influence China-Turkey relations I would like to emphasize is the East Turkestan issue. In the past, Turkey has made positive statements on this issue, but the key lies in how to implement these commitments, which will lay a solid foundation for strengthening political trust between China and Turkey. The third, in terms of culture, although mutual exchanges between the cultural and intellectual communities of the two countries have begun to increase, and the number of students studying and working in each other's countries is also gradually increasing. Overall, the understanding between the two countries is still very limited. I still remember that when the embassy Musa visited Center for Turkish Study, he mentioned that it's really hard for him to find a book about China studies in Turkey. So when he went to China, so I see it shows that the two countries urgently need to increase the supply of knowledge about Turkey and Turkey. But the last question is about the prospects for China-Turkey relations. So now we see that the Turkish political situation is stable, the national security is stable, but now its economy is encoding some great challenges. However, from the Chinese perspective, it is very, very feasible to upgrade China-Turkey relations. I'm an optimistic person. I'm always, because Turkish studies my career in the next maybe 30 or 50 years. So I'm always optimistic about China-Turkey relations for several reasons. The first, the overall development trend of China-Turkey relations is on the rise. Even I would like to give you an example. In 2009, China-Turkey relations were at their lowest point due to the July 5th incident. But even so, the 2010, we established a strategic cooperation, right? Even in that lowest point, we established a strategic cooperation. So what established between China and Turkey in 2010. So although there have been some minor frictions on Xinjiang related issues in recent years, the overall situation is still positive. First reason. Second, the next few years still be a good period for China and Turkey to increase relations. At present, Erdogan and the AK Party have been in power for nearly more than 23 years. The Turkish government, under the leadership of the President Andrew, is still very friendly to China, and it's also very clear about China's bottom line, right line, on issues related to Xinjiang. In addition, both Turkey and China belong to developing countries. Seeking stability, promoting development, and ensuring security are the core tasks of the two governments. So at the same time, they face pressure. We all face the pressure from the West. So therefore, as long as the two sides truly achieve a cooperation on strategic issues and respect core interests of the two countries, it will be inevitable for the bilateral relation to further consolidate and develop to a higher level. So this second reason. Thirdly, China holds similar, just as the professor said, we had similar positions on many global issues, regional issues, Israel, Palestine issue, Ukraine crisis, the Gaza crisis, a lot of issues. We share similar ideas. We can cooperate in the future. So, of course, the series of issues mentioned above between the two countries cannot be solved immediately, and it requires the patience of the two countries, two governments from both countries. So therefore, China and Turkey should focus on existing practical problems and seek ways to enhance their relationships. Then maybe the first one is to continue strengthen the communication between the political parties, because I might focus about the political parties in Turkey. Why not? To strengthen the communication, more communication between different Chinese community party and more political parties in Turkey. The second is to actively develop local diplomacy. Now it's Shanghai and Istanbul sister cities, Shanghai and Ankara sister cities. So why don't we, increase more cooperation between the other Turkey's citizen provinces with Chinese more cities and provinces, local, cooperation. We will find more opportunity to cooperate. Third is to strengthen economic cooperation and consolidate the economic interests of the two countries to make our relation more closely. The fourth is to moderately or carry out maybe military exchange activities, just as Dr. Wang just in last panel said, we can cooperate in the high technology, we can cooperate in outer space technology. Why don't we, carry out more military exchanges, trainings, cooperation? Actually, we have before 2010. We have joint military training or between Chinese navies and Chinese air forces and Turkish Air Force. Why don't we continue that trend? The fifth is deepen cultural exchanges and cooperation between China and Turkey. So last few words about my conclusion. So today, China is promoting Chinese path to modernization and moving towards the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, while Turkey is also moving towards Vision 23 or Vision 2053 and even Vision to 2071. You have also your big dreams. So in this sense, the Chinese dream and the Turkey dream will go hand in hand in the 21st century. Just Turkey claims that 21st century will be the century of Turkey, right? So based on the following reasons, first, the similarity of the historic development paths of China and Turkey. Another reason, the importance of Turkey in the Middle East and even in the global politics is increasingly prominent. Another reason is in view of this continuous depending relations between China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other countries in the past 2 or 3 years, the upgrading China-Turkey relations from the current strategic cooperation to a high level in the future is of a great strategic significance for both China and Turkey. Thank you so much for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yang Chen. You gave us a very comprehensive view of bilateral relations for the last maybe 15 or 20 years, in which there were fluctuations, ups and downs, as you mentioned. But this is pretty much the case in Turkey's relations with almost every country, because there are so many changes in international and regional politics. The idea should be how to keep relations in track, and you made very concrete proposals, especially at the end of your speech, and maybe there could be other ideas or opinions to come from the audience. Thank you very much. And I would like to move on with our second Turkish speaker, Dr. Altay Atlı, a lecturer from Koç University. And I think it's a very good tie, and he's going to focus more on business relations, where Mr. Yang Chen left. So floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to SETA for having me. Murat Hocam, thank you for this opportunity, and also thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet longtime friends like Professor Go, Professor Jin, and dear Yang Chen, like after not so many years. We met last year actually, but it's always good to see old friends. Thank you very much. And well, Diren Hoca has said, the Turkish-Chinese relationship is not only about trade, but it's also about how the two countries see the world. And I totally agree with that. But I'm going to take it back to trade because, well, that's what I know best. And also it matters. All right. And I'm going to make, as Mr. Chairman has already told you, I'm going to have a business-centric perspective, of course, from the perspective of the Turkish business, because this is where I'm standing. And I think that matters too, because we are talking about trade deficits, we are talking about investments, we are talking about how economic interdependence and the asymmetry of it is affecting relations. Well, who is doing this? Who is doing the trade? Who is doing the investments? Companies are doing it, and they do it for a reason. The trade deficit exists for a reason, right? So I think we need to listen to the companies more. We need to listen to businesses more, and well, when I say we need to listen more, also not just us, of course, not just academics, but also policymakers, foreign policy establishment. So there's a whole picture out there. All right, let me start. And and I think I'm in a good position to talk from this perspective, because I'm coming here with my two hats, one the academic side, and also on the other side, I'm advising the companies, Turkish companies, and also Turkish institutions like TÜSİAD and TEİK on China-related issues. So now one interesting trend these days is, when you talk to Turkish businesses about China, so I see two trends actually, a bit opposing trends, but maybe they tell us something. So on one hand, there's increasing enthusiasm about what China is doing in technology. Well, have you seen that latest gadget? Have you seen this latest technology from China? And so where is this going? What do you think? Okay, so this is increasing. On the other hand, I'm experiencing something like a deja vu, like fears from China. Now, this is I've been seeing like over the last couple of months, and especially in labor-intensive industries. 2 weeks ago, I spoke at a meeting of the textile and apparel industry. Before the meeting, we came together with the numerous chairmen of different business organizations, all in the textile. So they're like, okay, well, we cannot compete with the Chinese. But 20 years ago, we were hearing the same story, and then we were adapting, I thought. Now, what is the problem now? The thing is, it's a bit different from 20 years ago, because back then, it was like, well, they have the cost advantage, we cannot compete. Today, well, they still have the cost advantage, and now they have a value-added quality advantage as well. Now it's getting even more impossible to compete. So, all right, so within this, so how do we see China as a partner? Now, the official Turkish line is, over the last, I think, like 10, 15 years, is trade deficit exists for a reason. we need to do our best to increase our exports, but it won't be possible because, I mean, if you look at imports, there are many things involved, including like intermediary products, machinery, which we use in order to add value to our production and so on. So fine, let us stay there. But what can we do for balancing? There are more investment from China. Okay, and it's, well, numerically, that won't be enough to cover the difference. But what matters is the technology and know-how you can get from China to the Chinese investment. Mrs. Minister, Deputy Minister, she was talking about the BYD investment and why it matters for Turkey. Yes, it's not only about the money that is going to come, but it's mainly about how it's going to improve, like the ecosystem here, how it will add to the technological pursuit here. So okay, fine. It makes sense, and we have good cases. We have good examples of Chinese investment coming and also contributing technologically to Turkey. Now, back to my business perspective. So, one thing which is something you can see among Turkish companies, especially smaller, medium-scale companies, but investing in technology like the startup and so on, is, well, okay, fine, let the big Chinese investment come here, but we want to go to China as well because they are doing the technology, so it's better for us to be there. Even a big Turkish company like Top Gıda, the food investors, the Burger King, for those of you who don't know it, until very recently, Burger King chain, 1,500 restaurants in China was run by Atlı Holding, a Turkish company. So, and they started a technology startup there, not just for their own business, but also to follow the Chinese technological advance. So this is one thing. And if you look, and there's an overlap here with Turkish priorities and Chinese priorities. Now, just have a look at the recently released technology paper of the Turkish government, 2030 technology strategy. You will see, look at the priority areas there: semiconductors, defense industry, AI, quantum technologies, biotech, and genomes, electric vehicles, space economy. So this is the Turkish priorities. If I didn't tell you that, you could have thought that these are the Chinese priorities, which they are. So okay, then why not? But one more thing here. Mostly we talk about cooperation in technology, in the development of technology. We say, let big Chinese technology companies come to Turkey, bring technology, share technology, co-production, technology transfer in order to contribute to our own progress, our indigenous domestic progress here. Fine. But this is one thing. The other thing is, cooperation in the development of technology. Let's do it together. Fine. The other thing is cooperation and learning from each other in the use of technology. And this is what matters very much from the Turkish business perspective. Now, I remember a Turkish technology leader. So that's, you can say it's a fairly very influential startup, okay, in technology. They are doing very well. They have gone to Silicon Valley too, and so on. Now, the founder of that company has told me, I mean, he gave me a list. So how they are following the Chinese company. And he told me, Chinese company A has done this, has used AI and IoT and so on for improving productivity in this way. Chinese company B has used this and that for increasing customer experience and so on. Okay, so and I was amazed by that. So very close following. So to see. I am amazed myself too, because I had the chance to visit a few technology exhibitions. Yes, the latest technologies and so on, but what matters is, well, not the AI industry perhaps, but it's of course important, but what you do with that in agriculture perhaps, in mining, in construction business, right? So, and this is what the Turkish companies are more interested in. Okay, like 5G, AI, Internet of Things, blockchain, and so on, in order to improve productivity, in order to improve quality, in order to improve quality control, in order to improve security, workplace safety, and of course, consumer experience. And we can take this further. We can take this further. How is digital commerce, for example, changing with new technologies? And Turkish government is supporting companies, especially SMEs, to get engaged in international digital commerce platforms, including Chinese ones. So how do we follow this, and how to make sure that they are more effectively there? Talking about digitalization, digital commerce. Again, let me switch back to the Turkish government's 2030 technology strategy. There are some digital economy priorities here, and listen to me, and you see how again they match with what China is doing. We are prioritizing, for example, building fiber and 5G infrastructures, supporting robotics, IoT, cloud computing, blockchain, developing Turkish AI models, Turkish language AI models, launching the digital Turkish lira, increasing robot usage, like there are even targets there, by 8 times until 2030. Having 100,000 tech startups with $100 billion value until 2030. Again, you see the overlaps and the matching and the potential for, and this is what matters from the Turkish business perspective, right? So the Turkish government is of course setting up the framework, right? But within that macro framework, we need to understand what the micro levels are interested in, and taking care of them. A few more things before I finish. Of course, we need to talk about BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. So lately, we don't hear much about BRI here. Makes sense because there was the pandemic, and then priorities have shifted and so on. Now, but it's still important. Physical infrastructure, our focus, your focus, our focus has shifted to the digital, yes, for a good reason. But physical structure, infrastructure, I mean, this is still a physical world, sorry. Right, so it is still needed. Now, again, look, we talked about, again, Mrs. Deputy Minister talked about the importance of connectivity. She talked about like the middle corridor and harmonizing it with Belt and Road. Fine, these are very important targets, but please listen to the business as well. So what they will be telling is, yes, this is important, especially given all that is happening around our country these days, right? Up there, down there, and so on. But they will tell us more things. For example, yes, have more connectivity. Let the Chinese trains come here. But wait a minute, they are carrying goods to European markets, but I'm also trying to sell my goods in the European markets. Are these trains going to carry my goods too? When they come back from Europe, same? Okay, let's think about that. Or the other thing is, when the international trains are passing, local trains will have to wait because of, in many areas, limited capacity. Okay, do I really want that as a Turkish business owner? I'm trying to get my goods from point A to B, but the Chinese trains will be passing. So what is in there for me? So therefore, connectivity is important. But when you listen to the business, I mean, they have a good point there. And of course, the Turkish policymakers have to listen to them. They do listen to them. So therefore, connectivity has go hand in hand with capacity building, increased capacity. Now, we tend to, especially us academics, tend to talk about connectivity by drawing lines on the map. And the lines look good on the map. Okay, oh, see how I connected all the way from here there. Okay, fine. But these guys, the business community, they are the ones who will be, putting their money in there, putting their hopes in there, and so on. So we need more capacity. So then maybe connectivity comes about the question of how can we move further, like increasing railroad capacity and logistics capacity and all the other physical infrastructure capacities in terms of joint Turkish-Chinese investments. Finally, finance, because I want to say this because just 5 days ago, there was an agreement between the central banks of the two countries to renew the swap agreement for, this is 35 billion yuan against 189 billion Turkish liras. Okay, the swap agreements are good for two things. The first thing, the official thing is They provide liquidity in other in each other currencies currencies. So we have renminbi liquidity here. We have renminbi now in the central bank, and you have Turkish lira in your central bank. This and this can be used by companies who will do the trade. And well, not to the central bank, but the central bank gives the money to commercial banks. They provide the so-called risk discount credits. And the second thing is it's the dollarization, diversification of foreign exchange reserves. Turkish central banks has Chinese yuan in its reserves, which is a good thing, I think. Of course, dollar and euro are dominant, of course, but it's good to diversify. Fine, but I mean, today I wanted to look at some numbers. I just logged on the Turkish Statistical Institute to check the numbers. The trade, we know the trade numbers, 3.4 billion of exports last year from Turkey to China, and around 45 billion back from China to Turkey, what we are importing. I wanted to check how much of this trade is conducted in Chinese yuan. In terms of our exports, 3.1% is conducted in Chinese yuan. In terms of what we buy from China, 5% is gone. So the governments have signed agreements to encourage the use of local currencies, and companies are using dollar for a reason, of course, right? So how do we change this reason, or not change the reason, but how do we motivate, how do we encourage, how do we make it more advantageous for the companies? How do you make it more available for them? Okay, of course, I'm talking about companies. Companies exist to make profits, right? Not to serve, government agreements and so on. But the two needs to go hand in hand. Finally, just 1 minute, because we talked about people-to-people exchange. So tourism is very important, not just for tourism industry, not just for tourism revenues, not just for Alanya only, because do you have Chinese tourists coming there? Okay, yeah, I knew that. But I mean, while connecting to internet, I also checked those numbers, which I wanted to share. The last year before the pandemic, we had 426,000 visitors from China. The year 2020, just 40,000. You know the reason, right? Last year, it was 4,410. So we are almost back at the pre-pandemic levels in terms of Chinese visitors coming to Turkey. Obviously, we will go beyond that this year, fine. But the thing is, tourism is much more than just the tourism revenues, what the hotels are making, what the airlines are making. There are a lot of industries who are involved in that, side industries, from like food to all kinds of services and so on. And it's about people-to-people exchange, right? So, but final thing is, so again, talking from the Turkish perspective, here we have to work harder, I think. So the question, which I've been involved in for many years now, I've been in working groups for improving the Chinese tourist flows to Turkey, right? So we talk about many things. Let's employ more Chinese-speaking guides. Let's make the hotels more China-friendly, like have Chinese-speaking people there. Also make digital payments available and so on, and also offer different, more suitable packages to the Chinese clients. Also, use the Chinese social media more. Be creative. I mean, we are at the beginning, so we need to work harder. But if we can do that, not only will the Turkish incomes, revenues, tourism revenues will increase, but it will affect everything. So that's what I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Altay Atlı. Your intervention gave a lot of food for thought regarding business-to-business connections, business-to-government relations, businesses' relations with governments, and people-to-people contacts. Of course, there are many challenges, but also because of the changes in technology and the priorities of two sides, there is also strong ground for understanding and cooperation. Thank you very much. And finally, last but not least, we have another Chinese speaker from Shanghai University, Mr. Donghui. The floor is yours.
English, firstly, thank you to the Chinese Embassy on Turkey and the SETA for providing such an academic exchange platform. It's my honor to share some perspectives about China-Turkey relationships. First, I want to talk about the international background of the bilateral relations. We know after the Donald Trump was elected as the president in 2011, 13, he adopted the American First policy. In the same year, the President Xi Jinping proposed the judgment of profound changes unseen in a century. So this is marking a shift in China's perception of the international strategic environment. Before that years, Chinese leaders always say we are in a period of strategic opportunity. After that year, opportunities and risks. These two words always come together in China's official documents. In 2018, the U.S. launched a trade war against China using tariff barrier, technology blockades to contain China's rise. Meanwhile, Turkey also faced the pressure from American hegemony by supporting Kurdish terrorist forces in Syria, sanctioning Turkey's military industry and increasing tariffs on some goods from Turkey. So both countries have been facing pressure caused by American hegemony and its instability and uncertainty. Under this background, the balance of international power was undergoing profound adjustments with unilateralism and protectionism on the right, reshaping global governance rules. Next, I want to talk about the position of Turkey in China's diplomatic strategy. Now, the overall objective of China's foreign policy is to serve the country's rights and is to commitment to achieving the Chinese dream of great rejuvenation of Chinese nation. This requires a peaceful and stable international environment as a support, because China has been a major power for past 2,000 years. So its rise not a revisionism, but rather a rejuvenation in the Chinese context and return its former status. The biggest challenge facing China's rise is the U.S. containment policy. The U.S. views China's rise as a threat to its hegemonic status. The U.S. has employed a series, measures to contain China's development, including trade war, tariff war, technology war, psychology war, and propaganda war, and other forms of war. Therefore, the nature of China-U.S. competition is strategic, is systematic. So what's their strategies? The U.S. used alliance strategy, while China prefer non-alignment policy, or as is often described, a policy of partnership rather than alliance. China's partnership diplomacy has different levels. Taking the Middle East as an example, China have multilateral partnerships. China with the League of Arab States is defined by Chinese official document is a comprehensive, cooperative, mutually beneficial, and future-oriented strategic partnership. And China has a strategic partnership with the GCC. In terms of bilateral partnership, China has a comprehensive strategic partnerships with Algeria, Egypt, Saudi, Iran, UAE, and then China has a strategic cooperation with Turkey. China has an innovative, comprehensive partnership with Israel. China also has a partnership with a strategic partnership with Qatar, Jordan, Iraq, Morocco, Sudan, Djibouti, Oman, Kuwait, Palestine. I mean, China and Turkey established a strategic cooperation as early as 2010, but the level is not so high. among Middle Eastern countries, 5 have a comprehensive strategic partnership with China. 9 are strategic partnership. So what are the reasons for the relatively low level of China-Turkey relations? As mentioned by Professor Yang, that strategic mutual trust is a foundation of bilateral relations, and the so-called Uyghur issues is the key to strategic mutual trust. So Turkey's stance on this issue will directly affect China's attitude towards Turkey. Next, I want to talk about China's position in Turkey grand strategy. Turkey's strategic positioning is always being closely linked to its identity. In this regard, Brzezinski and Huntington has great remarks. From Brzezinski, Turkey as a post-imperial state is still in the process of redefining its identity in 3 directions. Moderates look to the west, Islamists look to the south, nationalists look to the east. Similar to Brzezinski, from the point of Huntington, Turkey is a torn country. I quote the 2 scholars above, just want to show that Brzezinski and Huntington are discussing Turkish grand strategy in terms of Turkey's diversity of identity and geopolitical openness. Here, in their opinion, identical diversity and geopolitical openness seems to be a burden for Turkey. Look to the east, look to the west, look to the south. Those kinds of things seems that Turkey has to make a decision in a changing situation. But I have noticed that in the past few years, Turkish scholars have increasingly discussed Turkey's grand strategy from the perspective of Turkish, like the Journal of Perception, Journal of International Affairs hosted by SAM, and Inside Turkey founded by SETA have many articles about this topic. If we search on Google Scholar, we can find at least a dozen of articles about this topic. So from the discussion of grand strategy among Turkish indigenous scholars, we can find some points. The first is Turkey perceives the diversity of its civilization and culture, history, and geopolitical resources from a positive way, from a positive perspective. It's very different from Brzezinski and Huntington. Second is Turkey rejects dichotomy, having multi options rather than a single choice. For instance, Turkey in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and in China-US strategic competition, Turkey maintains strategic ambiguity instead of taking sides. Thirdly, I found that Turkey is increasingly embracing strategic autonomy and pursuing regional and even global status. And fourth, it's essentially a form of, from my perspective, Turkish scholars' discussion about the grand strategy is a kind of Turkish centralism, because it means Turkey does not look to the east, look to the south, or look to the west, but rather look to itself, look to Turkey itself. In this context, what is the role of China in Turkish grand strategy? I think if Turkey aims to achieve strategic autonomy, China serves as a balancer, in its relation with the West. China could be a partner, if Turkey want to expand its links in developing countries through closer institutional ties with organizations like SCO and the BRICS. China could be a potential partner. China could also be a diplomatic leverage if Turkey wishes to retain its Cold War position or strengthen its position with NATO and deepen its strategic relation with the Western countries. China may serve a diplomatic leverage. China could be competitors. If Turkey intends to exert, some ideological and pan-Islamism and pan-Turkism, China may be emerging as a competitor. Therefore, in the China, US, and Turkey triangular relations, Turkey holds a favorable position because the better relations between China and America. For China, strategic competition with the US is not a matter of choice. It's a challenge you have to face. For Turkey, it can adopt a flexible stance and maintain friendly relations with both sides. So China-Turkey relations, in my opinion, is decided by Turkey's side, because China is always need friends, especially in the pressure of US. However, when Turkish scholars discuss its grand strategy, I heard another voice. Here's a paragraph from inside Turkey. Unfortunately, the other side, Turkish grand strategy is also compatible with US grand strategy in containing China, since Turkey is home to largest Uyghur diaspora in the world, a Turkic Muslim minority that is severely repressed by the communist regime in China. The primary economic and strategic partners of China in the Middle East and Eurasia, such as Iran, Russia, and China's economic partners such as UAE, are also adversary of Turkey. And in that sense, too, Turkey's priority are not incompatible, but rather fundamentally compatible with containing and rolling back Chinese expansion. It's not my opinion. I quote this paragraph from inside Turkey. If Turkey adopts this kind of grand strategy, the future of China-Turkey relations, I think, is will be bleak and pessimistic. Next, I want to talk about the strategic convergence points that between China and Turkey. As scholars who focus on Turkish study, I always hope to see the steady progress in the bilateral relations. At the same time, it's important to actively look for new ways to tell our stories, to tell new stories, share values and common interests. The China-Turkey relationship could be explored from those new perspectives. The first is common pursuit of strategic autonomy. Here's the background. Both countries have impressive history as an empire. Respectively, Chinese Empire and the Ottoman Empire. This empire history has kind of plant this idea in our collective memory that we value our independence and do not wish to be under anyone else's control. We both want to play a strong independent role in our region and on the global stage. At the heart of Turkish grand strategy is breaking free from outside influence and having an independent foreign policy. That is pretty much in line with China's great rejuvenation of Chinese nation. The second is resonance in opposing to imperialism. China and Turkey are both inheritors of a great historical empire, but they share a common stance in opposing imperialism. Here's the historical background. The Kemal Atatürk leadership in Turkey War of Independence was not only about the cornerstone of modern Turkey, but also inspired all oppressed nations, including China. Chinese intellectuals and revolutionaries during the Republic of China period regarded Kemal Atatürk as a role model. Turkish diplomacy during the Atatürk era with its motto, peace at home, peace in the world, Yotsu Jihanasu, pursue independence and autonomy. Today, both China and Turkey are facing different forms of hegemony pressures from US. Dr. Kissinger's quote is particularly relevant here. It's dangerous to be an enemy of America, but it's fatal to be a friend. This judgment has been repeatedly proven in Turkey-U.S. relationships, as the U.S. frequently sacrificed and ignored Turkish core interests and in Cyprus crisis, Cuban Missile crisis, and the Syria civil war. Thirdly, I want the common demand global governance reform. Both China and Turkey identify with their status as developing or emerging countries. China is the largest developing country in the world, while Turkey is an important member of Organization of Islamic Cooperation and OTS, representing emerging market economy. We both believe that the current global governance system, such as the UN, IMF, World Bank, does not reflect the interests and the voice of the developing countries. Therefore, China and Turkey share broad common interests in promoting the reform of the global governance system towards a more just, reasonable, and inclusive direction. Finally, I want to say China and Turkey share the joint rejection of the clash of civilization theory. Faced with the rising clamor of clash of civilization and the cultural superiority, both China and Turkey have put forward their own perspectives on civilization. The Alliance of Civilization initiative, co-launched by Turkey and Spain, aimed to promote cross-cultural and inter-religion dialogue. China's Global Civilization Initiative adopts advocates respecting the diversity of world civilization and strengthening international culture and peace-to-peace exchange. Those two initiatives, though different in form, share the same purpose, expressing a firm belief in the pluralistic coexistence and the mutual learning of human civilization. This provides us a solid ideological foundation to jointly address ideological confrontations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Donghui brought the discussion back to strategic issues. So we ended on a larger level, but we discussed about different layers of issues between Turkey and China and how compatible their visions are regarding many issues. So I'm sure there will be some comments or questions arising from the audience. If so, now you're welcome to raise your hands. Please identify yourselves, your affiliation, and if your question is to a specific speaker, please indicate that as well. Yes, please.
Thank you. My question is for Diren Hojiang. And Diren Hojiang, actually, last year, I already noticed your article in the Creator about read the Turkey-Chinese relation on the shadow of the Fiden's visit to China. And I also want to ask you about some questions about the Xinjiang issues, because I remember that last year when I met with another Turkey professor and he complained with me like, I don't know why sometimes the Americans are more worried about the issue, Uyghur issues than us. And also I heard about from some Turkey friends say like, if it were not for the Western propaganda, most of the Turkish people may have no idea about the Xinjiang issues. And even now, if you ask a normal Turkish people to point out where is the Xinjiang or so-called the East Turkestan on the map, he or she cannot find it. And also, if you ask what kind of alphabet do Uyghur people use in China, and most of them also don't know about, actually they are now using the Arabic letters. So I want to ask you like, what do you think about this issue, and what should like both China and Turkey need to do to eliminates the misunderstandings between this, because I think that no matter what we say about the collaboration between between economic cultures and whatever, this must be bridged if our relations want to get a new level. And the second question is about the OTS, the Organization of Turkish States. And also this is also not only for China, but for Russia and Iran. They all concerned about it. And they also want to know what does the Turkish government want to do. And what's your opinion? Thank you. And my name is Wang and from the Hacettepe University. Thank you.
Yes, it was quite broad question. Maybe my presentation was quite optimistic, but if we need to mention Uyghur issue, by the way, it's out of my study area, but I can mention about Minister Hakan Fidan's visit to the Xinjiang and China changed many things about Uyghur issue that we know, because in there he mentioned Uyghur issue on the perspective of culture and religion, and it was important because directly he opened a session to he mentioned that in the shadow of his speech, we know that it's using as a stick Uyghur issue, but we are focused on just cultural and religional perspective. On this side, Turkish side's Uyghur issue totally different than Western perspective. I need to mention this important. On the other side, the feature of the China-Sino-Turkish relations, I think we need just mutual trust. It's quite important for us, not just only Chinese side, but also for us. And when we improve this mutual trust, everything can be easily solved. But I'm talking about out of trade and business perspective, because it is not just Turkish side's problem, it's a globally problem because of economic and trade problem. But on the security issues and on the economical issues, out of these issues, we need mutual trust and we need time with China. Because first we will go a path with China and we will do some practice, and after this session we will understand each other, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, Mr. Gentleman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity. I have one comment and one question. My comment is that many people ask about China's role in the Middle East. I would like to say that it seems that you have a lot of dissatisfactions or even more expectations for China to play a big role. I would like to say that as a humble scholar, that China will gradually playing a bigger role in the region. Okay. And the second, another comment about China's role in the region. Many people use the word China's policy as non-intervention, something like that. But my personal interpretation of that word is different. My personal interpretation of China's policy in the region or in the other part of the world is actually non-interference. The two words are different. Okay, our speaker here say something, you say it is an intervention. Okay, intervention originally is a word for medical use. Okay. If you have a cancer, the doctors intervened, they cured the disease, okay? So interference is quite a different word, okay? Generally speaking, intervention to make an order, interference to make a disorder, okay? That is the difference. Our policy is a non-interference, okay? We actually intervened. For instance, we mediated into the reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. That is an intervention, okay? So that is the different. But after saying that, I would like to say, Americans say that they have an intervention, but usually they are actually interfering in domestic affairs in the name of intervention. Okay, I would like to make an interpretation about that. And secondly, my question is for our Turkish colleagues. Okay, my question is, Americans are actually pushing almost all countries to distant away from China. Okay, but you have a lot of relations with the United States. On our side, it is understandable. Okay, but if the United States pushed you too much, particularly on China-Turkey cooperation in infrastructure, even AI cooperation, 5G telecommunication technology cooperation, do you think that Turkey will make concessions? Okay, what will you do? Where will you renege the contracts previously signed between the two sides? Thank you.
As you wish.
I think we don't need the United States or America because, as you know, we are a NATO country, member of NATO country, and critical infrastructure is quite important for NATO. And NATO mentioned that China is a challenger. Be cautious about like infrastructures. So under these circumstances, we must rely on these regulations, in my opinion.
But America, you read it, I'm afraid that they have something like that.
Okay, well, good question, of course, and it's not the first time I'm receiving this question. The very same question was asked to me by a Chinese company, a technology company. Of course, I'm not going to tell you which one, but you know, very same question. So there are these concerns, but then, of course, difficult to answer. I mean, it will be only speculation if I say something, but a few things, like Turkey is, for example, think about what is critical. Let's say 5G. Okay, 5G is critical. Now, at the moment, Turkish cooperation with 5G is with China. So we see that, and we have always, you know, many speakers have referred to Minister Fidan's visit to China. But what I see is over the last year or so, like the Minister of Technology, the Minister of Infrastructure, their deputy ministers, one by one, there have been many visits to China and related to tangible things, infrastructure things. Right, rather than just talk or being nice and so on. So, well, it is now, of course, I don't have an answer to your question, but so far, this is how it goes. And the other thing is, you know, my friend said, like, if Turkish, you know, he talked about Turkish strategic autonomy and China can be a balancer here. And so I totally agree with that. And looking from our business perspective, from our economic perspective, Turkey's main economic partner is Europe. It's the West, right? So most of our trade is with the West. You know, in between 60 to 70% of all the foreign direct investment, which also brings technology, is from Europe. The share of China is, you know, around 1%, 2% here. These are official numbers, of course. Let's not get into technicalities because FDI numbers from central bank is only the direct export of capital, doesn't include retained capital, reinvest capital. Never, I mean, I'm talking about 60 to 70 and just a couple of percentages here. So like sometimes we hear from the Western media when Turkey does something tangible with China or with the non-West world, or Turkey's axis is shifting, but economically speaking, at least. So, I mean, the Turkish economy is very much anchored in the West, in Europe, and this is not going to change. But strategic autonomy, which also matters for business, having options, not putting all the eggs in the same basket. These are important things. And if it's about technology, I'm being very pragmatic here. So if you have good 5G, I'm interested. Okay, so It's very pragmatic, actually. Business needs pragmatism as well. So again, I didn't answer your question, I know, but these are some of my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear gentleman over there, and then. Yeah.
Yes, my name is Joe. In the afternoon, the last section, previous section, I expressed them. So currently, I express 4 points, 2 questions, 2 comments. One point, 1 question for the lady. I'm in Ankara for 10 years. I'm the leader of Chinese company here in Turkey. Under my leadership, there are more than 1,540 Chinese companies. This is by TÜİK, by your national statistics computer. But actually, this is a wrong number, totally wrong number. I think approximately only 200 Chinese companies survive in the Republic of Turkey. One question: how your country, your government, to attract talented boys and girls in to serve for your nation? This is the only one question. And the second question to Dr. Atlı from Koç University. Why Turkish Airlines and your defense industry in past 5 years, Turkish Airlines in past 10 years so successful, even much faster than Chinese business? And I share 2 points. One point is that maybe this is this word, I don't know who expressed this word. You just worry about, and you mentioned again, the deputy ministers go to China to ask for assistance, ask for transfer technology. Actually, maybe this mentioned many times by our big boss, our country big boss. Western countries, they will never, ever, never share or transfer any high technology to poor countries because they want to monopolize the whole world. The whole world, developing countries should serve as slaves for them so that they can maximize their benefits. They only holiday, even holiday for 365 days, and you work for them. So in your country, my opinion is that you must work for yourself, research by yourself, because for chips and the semiconductors and auto chips, of course, this should be helped by friendly countries. This is the core issues. And the second point I want to express, last 3 days ago, my high school classmate, a very beautiful lady, their team, I was astonished because I'm the leader of Chinese company here in Turkey. One time, 3 chartered airplane by Turkish Airlines from Shanghai to Istanbul, totally 600 tourists in one time, and full of, so Cappadocia, only 5 days. So this last week happened, the real story. It means that from this year, so many Chinese tourists are flashing into Turkey. They're very happy. They're very happy. So I think because my target is next 5 years, Chinese and Turkish totally revenue can be up to 100 billion US dollar. It's very easy because you need us. We need your market. You need our semi product because Chinese product is very cheap. But it's very interesting that yesterday evening, I was shocked to hear that your maybe Daik, maybe team, your just secretly instruct your companies who OEM in Chinese company just to change the labor from made in Turkey to made in China. So my thinking that I fully appreciate Mr. Yang Chen from Shanghai. Actually, this top talent from Shanghai, because Shanghai is a #1 modern city in China. So their research and culture relations also #1. So their talent, they have very deep understanding of the 2 countries. So my thinking that, my suggestion that Turkey and China only doing business silently. Don't talk about anything. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do it, but never talk.
The first question, it is actually out of my study area, but we can discuss during tea.
And would you like to respond to that?
Oh yeah, just a few things. I agree with you when you say that Turkey needs to develop its technological capabilities and so on, and so of course, and you said, and also work with friendly countries. Certainly, that's what I'm talking about, and this is the world that we are living in. So I think that the greatest lesson that we have from the pandemic and the trade wars and everything that we see at the moment is, well, one thing, well, supply chains, dependencies were good for a while, but now it makes you fragile, vulnerable. It can be weaponized against you. So weaponized interdependence is a new term in the international relations literature. So lessons are for each country, including Turkey, of course, be self-sufficient as much as possible. Second, absolute self-sufficiency won't be possible because this is still a connected world. You cannot do everything yourself. Then diversify your partners, work with friendly countries, as you said. But again, don't put all the eggs in the same basket. And, diversify the risk. This is a risky world. I agree with you on that. And yeah, Turkish Airlines, and I share your optimism in terms of the tourism numbers. And yes, but there's one thing, flights are full. I know that. And also, again, I will refer to Mrs. Deputy Minister because she told us about the rising frequencies of flights. This is important, but there's one thing, I'm in Shanghai. I'm waiting to depart on the flight. Fully booked. A lot of Chinese tourists. You can tell they are tourists, like from, the way they act and so on. But some of them are going elsewhere, not to Turkey, because Istanbul is now an important hub. I could see it like they have two boarding cards. Istanbul, then somebody has Istanbul, Athens, Istanbul, Barcelona, and so on. But never mind, this is just a detail. I told you the numbers. It's increasing, and there are more Chinese tourists, which is good for both sides. I agree with you on that. Do business and do not talk. I get what you mean. But of course, communication is important, right? Dialogue is important. We need to talk more. But let's say, yeah, do it and also talk while you're doing it, right? So yeah, we cannot do anything without the dialogue. So what you talk about is probably important. All right. Well, thank you very much. Good to see you here. I follow Çinsiat very closely. I've been to some of your events actually, and we have been in a panel with you together. But it was the pandemic, so we were like squares on the Zoom screen. Good to see you in person here. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are running short on our time. We have a last. Let's have a last question, and please a short one.
Thank you. I'm Mehmet Fatih. I'm a master's candidate in the Geneva Graduate Institute. My question is for Mr. Donghui. First of all, thank you for your great speech on the civilization agendas and a grand strategy. Well, as you said, both Turkey and China have a civilizational agenda that's divergent from the dominant Western civilizational discourse, and they're very complementary. However, when we look at the grand strategy of China and the relationship between Turkey and China, it seems very transactional without leading to any real normative change. We are in an era where the international order is disintegrating. The international law is being violated. There is increasing and dangerous levels of disillusionment towards the international system and the UN organizations worldwide. China has reinforced its position and its commitment to the UN system and the international law multiple times. However, I want to ask you, whether do you think that this civilizational agendas of Turkey and China can lead to normative change and can turn this era of destruction into an era of transformation in the global order?
Thank you for your questions. Actually, I don't want to enlarge our difference, even conflicts of narratives. But the key issues is how to surpass the obstacles of our bilateral relations. Actually, first we have to admit that we have different narratives about Turkic and Turkic-speaking peoples. You know, in Turkey, Turk is equal to Turkic-speaking peoples, but in China, Turk is very different from the Turkic-speaking peoples because the former is an ethnic concept, the latter is a kind of language group umbrella. So, I mean, narratives are important because it's not about right and wrong. It's about what kind of stories you believe, who you are, where you're from, and where you go. Here's the problem that for Turkish side, Turkey always talk about Xinjiang and Uyghur issues based on, kinship diplomacy, or a feeling of brotherhood. In Turkish narratives of foreign policy, it always talk about it has a brotherly relation with Azerbaijan, one nation, two states. It has a twins brotherly relation with North Cyprus, and it has a brotherly relations with Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, etc. It's understandable. I think it could show your close relationship, but when some Turkish guys say Uyghurs are our brothers, what does it mean for us? It kind of means we have the right to intervene your internal affairs, as mentioned by Jin Liangsheng. So the concept of brother is a kind of misunderstanding in Chinese context. China's narrative is based on the nation-state norms and the principle of non-interference mentioned by Jin Liangsheng, and China expects Turkey to adopt the same principle to China. So, you mentioned the civilization issues. I think the key issues is to tell our different stories together first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yang Chen. Would you like to add something?
I would like to use a sentence. Thank you for your question. Really important. Two keywords: civilization, right? One keyword, another keyword. How can China to Turkey to cooperate for a new global order? Possible, high possibility. First one. Oh, sorry. Civilization. I've been here for 2 years. I've studied Turkey for so many years. We share many commonalities. I mean, the history, our domestic, policy towards the religious issues, ethnic issues. For example, Ottoman Empire, like our Professor Uğur has a study about the military system and Ottoman Empire. We share many similarities. So we tolerate, we are diversified. Religion. Respect different people's religious beliefs. And we respect different people from different countries if they live, in China or living in Turkey. So we have a similar understanding of civilization to respect each other from history until now. And about the second question, how can China, Turkey to cooperate to establish a new global order? I remember very clearly when the main ambassador Musa still visited our center. And he said very clear sentences that we are in the same boat, China, and who will be the future in, United States hegemony, since 1990s, that's a unit and the sole hegemony to dominate the so-called rules-based international order. However, the trend now is changing. It doesn't mean that the United States maybe is declining or not, but on the other hand, China, who is, leading the development of the world. I mentioned several countries of China, Russia, Turkey, India, some other countries. So we are in the same boat. the real multilateralism. So only we can join hands to work together to really create a new order and to give, accept that multilateralism will be the future. China holds the same position. Why don't we join hands together to create a new global order? Am I right? So much for my comment.
Thank you very much for this positive note at the end of the panel. Of course, there are differences of opinions, conflicts of interest between every country in the world. But in today's international order, and probably in the future as well, it is not easy to conduct diplomacy or any business in a black or white understanding of the world. So we are living in a gray or different shades of gray tones. And if we continue to talk, I'm sure we'll find many ways to cooperate and have at least understandings even on disagreements. So thank you very much for all participants and all listeners, all the audience for today's event. I think we are all tired, so I would like to close the event now, and I hope to meet you in our later events. Thank you very much.